Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Chainsaw Reacts podcast, episode number 23. And today, guys, we are covering two topics, and those topics in order are number one, the officially released Entertainment Weekly photos for X-Men Apocalypse. I'm very excited. We're going to start with the Entertainment Weekly cover of X-Men Apocalypse, featuring Apocalypse, Psylocke, and Magneto, and work our way down and all that. So that's the first topic. We're going to get into those pictures and all that kind of stuff in order. So whatever pictures on screen during this section of the podcast will be the picture I'm talking about, so you guys can follow along with me and all that kind of stuff. The second topic, we're actually going to be talking about a TV show I've been binge watching for a while now, and that is The Walking Dead. I'm up to season 4 on Netflix. I have unfortunately not finished the last episode of season 4. I will be getting to spoilers. Basically, I just want to talk about all things about Walking Dead up to right before the last episode of season 4 and all that, just kind of talk about and all that kind of stuff, get my thoughts out about it, because it's just insane. I know I'm far back. I know I'm far behind from a lot of people, but I just want to talk about this on a podcast. So there is that. So, anyways, guys, without wasting any time, let's jump into the first topic, which is X-Men Apocalypse Entertainment Weekly photos. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with the cover, which, surprisingly enough, this actually surprised me. Not unlike the Batman v Superman Entertainment Weekly photos, kind of made sense because it was right before Comic-Con, and this is the big event of next year. But the X-Men Apocalypse cover and all that kind of stuff, kind of early in a sense of where they're still filming the actual film at this point, I believe, and they decided we're going to do an Entertainment Weekly cover with a bunch of release photos, show off Apocalypse for the very first time. So we're getting a lot of reveals here. So let's jump into the cover, which you're already seeing on screen here now. Of course, with Apocalypse in the middle, kind of in the back, Psylocke, and then Magneto, which is an interesting choice that they had Psylocke and Magneto and Apocalypse as their covers. You really would have thought that they would have probably went with a Professor X in a wheelchair, Magneto, and then Apocalypse standing in the back, but that's not the direction they wanted to go. So let's get into the first thing here. Let's start from a person we've already seen in the past two films, a young Magneto. Let's start with Magneto and we'll work our way over. So we'll start with Magneto here first. So first of all, I like his costume. I like this. It looks like it's very metal plated costume he's wearing, at least for a chest plate. I could kind of see the cape in the back, but overall, it's just like the design and the style of it just looks very awesome. I just never expected his costume to really get technical like this, where it's metalized and all that kind of stuff, and he can kind of control, metal and all that kind of stuff. So you really would have thought that he probably would have went with a more casual, wear, because he can basically do whatever the hell he wants. But his costume, at least in this, at least for whenever he's wearing this in the movie, I doubt he's wearing this in the entire film. This costume is badass, and of course Michael Fassbender looks pretty awesome there. You see the helmet he's holding, of course, and if you weren't really paying attention, you wouldn't see all the details that go into his costume that really makes it stand out, because everyone immediately goes to Psylocke or Apocalypse, and they kind of forget how badass young Magneto looks here. It just looks very, very awesome. I really like the design of his costume, like I said, and I honestly can't wait to see what it looks like movement wise, and how he's going to basically, how badass he's going to look wearing this costume on screen. I can't wait to see it, because I think this is the only time we actually see the costume in any of these release photos, at least, yeah, as I scroll down here to look. It's the only thing, so I'm assuming this is going to be his battle suit, where he's going to be wearing this during the final battle, or wearing this at some point in the movie during a fight scene or something, because this is something where you just don't wear unless you're going to war, and I believe Magneto's going to go to war in this movie. There's a lot of things to talk about within this. So anyways, let's continue on here with Psylocke, and then we'll move on up to the big guy there, Apocalypse. So Psylocke's design is very comic book-esque. It's a little bit different. I like the coloring, though. It's not like bright purple. It's kind of a darker purplish, more towards a purple bluish type mix there. And of course you see her with the sword, and then you see kind of like purple electricity like coming off of her hand that's in a fist. Her hair is, of course, not completely purple. It's got blackish and purple in it as well, unless that's the lighting of the picture. It could be completely purple. I might be mistaken there. But regardless, I do like her costume. I know some people online are having some issues, of course, because everyone has opinions on how they think they should look in the movies and the comic books, if they should be closely resembling the comics, or just distinctly different, because the X-Men movies have been either not necessarily very similar to the comics, but they've tried to make homages to them. And from what I've been hearing online, and obviously as you can tell by her costume, this is probably the most closest to the comic books costume we've seen probably in the entire X-Men series, or close to it, because this is basically taken from the comic books and changed slightly to kind of fit in this more darker X-Men movie, as I'm hoping they're going to be delivering, kind of like X-Men Days of Future Past, a very dark X-Men movie, of course with some humor moments, but overall was a darker film. So I'm hoping that's the direction they're taking this as well, because this is the biggest, most badass villain. This is a more badass villain than Magneto, and Magneto has been a force to reckon with for multiple X-Men movies. So the fact that they're actually bringing in Apocalypse is a big deal. But anyway, Psylocke, I think her costume looks great. Olivia Munn looks great. Now, whether she's going to perform well on screen is a completely different story, because she might look the part, because she looks the part. She looks like Psylocke. She looks like she could be a freaking badass. But that doesn't mean it's going to transfer well on screen. She might look good on screen. She might, like stand there and look badass. But when she's acting, I don't know. Because, see, I've been kind of hit and miss with Olivia Munn, so we'll see how it is. But hopefully her role is not necessarily more towards dialogue, but more towards action and, those really hard-hitting moments. I'm hoping that a lot of her scenes, there's not really a lot of talking, because I have a feeling that people might get taken out of the film a little bit if her acting's a little off. And we see how badass she looks, but when she's speaking and you don't really feel connected, and you're kind of like, I don't believe her as Psylocke when she's speaking and all that kind of stuff, or rather just see her kick the crap out of people, then it's going to be kind of an issue. So let's hope for the best. And like I said, I have high hopes that everybody will do great, but there you go. Okay, so to Apocalypse. Of course, there'll be the next photo, which will be right after this one, to feature Storm, Psylocke, and Apocalypse. But let's talk about basically our first looks at him here, and we kind of just see the top of him. Now, a lot of people are either loving this or hating Apocalypse's new look in this movie. His look in the movie, not new look. It's his look in the movie. And honestly, to me, just by seeing the top of him, because we'll get to a more detailed photo, the next one down after this cover, but from what it looks like here, I like this direction they're taking, because it's basically they're trying to portray him as a pharaoh, a god. And as we saw at the end of X-Men Days of Future Past, he was younger. Obviously, it was a different actor, and he was moving a pyramid and forming a pyramid essentially with his mind and with his hands out and all this kind of stuff. And then you see the four horsemen on horses on the behind, kind of to the side of him and all that kind of stuff, watching him perform this feat. And I like the fact that they're making him look like an actual pharaoh, essentially, in a more modern time-esque compared to when it was back then. Of course, this movie is set in the 80s, but I like the fact that this look is a little bit different, because honestly, to all the people that say that, oh my god, Apocalypse should have looked like he does in the comics, it would not have transferred well on screen. I'm just saying, honestly and truthfully. It looks amazing in the comic books. He even looked amazing in the X-Men animated series from the 90s. I grew up watching that and loving that. And the Apocalypse episodes and the Apocalypse arcs where he showed up in those cartoon show in that animated show of the X-Men in the 90s was phenomenal. But I'm telling you guys, it would not have basically transferred well to screen. I don't think it would. It would look kind of weird comparatively. So they had to make it look like he is human, but he's also the first mutant. He's also basically he's been living for a long time, so they couldn't just make him a human, and they couldn't make him fully mechanical and robotic and all this kind of stuff, and like he does in the comics and everything. It would just look too weird. And since they're really going for that pharaoh angle, he has to kind of look like a more modernized pharaoh and make him look creepy and kind of eerie as he does. So Oscar Isaac's look here in this cover, at least, we'll get to more detailed in a second, like I keep saying, but just by this look, the way he's looking at you, I personally like this look, and I have hopes for this movie, obviously. So, okay, scroll on down here to Storm, Psylocke, and Apocalypse. Now, this is where people are also having issues with Apocalypse's look, is not only the design kind of weird, but the fact that he is the same height as a lot of the characters in the pictures here. And obviously they showed a trailer at Comic-Con. Of course, the trailer is not released publicly, so we cannot comment. But as we see here, clearly he is the same height as Storm, it looks like, and he's a little bit taller than Psylocke here. but people have an issue with that, and I personally believe that he will transform and they'll use CGI to make Oscar Isaac bigger. Probably during the final fight or at some point in the movie, he's going to show that he can grow in size and he's going to become a bigger Apocalypse, essentially, where he's going to grow in size. So I believe that will happen, but I think for the majority of this film, he's going to show that even though he's on the same height level as most of the characters in the film, he's going to show he's still a freaking badass. So I have no issues there. I have no worries. I think he's going to do great. And as we see the full costume here, a lot of people have made jokes that it's Mr. Freeze again from Batman and Robin, but the design of it is very, very cool. I like that it's a straight color. Essentially, it's the same color as his skin. The outfit he's wearing is basically the same color. It's, like I said, the Pharaoh-esque and all that kind of stuff, and you get to see, all of the cool designing and all the basically twists and turns and how everything just kind of connects together. It's a really interesting look, and I really do like the look. Honestly, I know people have issues with it, but for me, it's hard to explain. It's just it's different. I like the fact that they're doing something different with his look, because if they went strictly like the comic books and just transferred over like what it's in the comic books and all that kind of stuff and just transferred it over, people would have issues that, oh my god, they didn't even try to do something different. They just basically just copied and pasted for the comics and that's it. So I like the fact that they are trying something different, and I think it will succeed. I mean, look what everybody thought about when we first saw our first look at Quicksilver, from X-Men Days of Future Past. Everyone flipped their shit over that. And now everyone says that's probably one of their favorite characters from the movie, and he basically stole the movie when he was in it. And the scene where he was running, of course, and everything was in slow motion, that everyone says that's the best scene when he was in that kitchen scene where he was just running around and everything and messing with the bullets and moving them around and messing with the guards and stuff. But everyone says that's one of their favorite scenes in the entire movie. So he stole the movie essentially, and everyone made fun of his look. So I'm telling everybody that says, "Oh my God, this looks terrible," guys, it's probably going to be awesome. I'm not going to say it's awesome. I can't say because I have no idea. The movie is, of course, a little less than a year away, but I have high hopes. Bryan Singer has not done us wrong yet. He did X-Men 1, X-Men 2, X-Men Days of Future Past, and all three films are great. So I have high hopes that he will deliver a fantastic film, and I have no issues with the Apocalypse look. Of course, Psylocke here again. Decent, awesome, whatever. Before I say what I had to say about her look. We get a first look at here at Storm with the Mohawk, and of course, it's been confirmed she is one of the four horsemen of the Apocalypse. Storm, Psylocke, Archangel, and Magneto are the four horsemen of the Apocalypse, so it makes sense that they're Psylocke and Storm are both here in a picture. I like the Mohawk look. Obviously, it's going to get taken used to because I'm so used to Halle Berry. Obviously, a lot of people have issues with Halle Berry as a Storm, but I love the original cast of the X-Men movies, the original people who played these characters, not the younger versions, the older characters. So, but anyways, her costume looks pretty cool. The cape and the back looks kind of weird, but it's kind of sparkly and stuff. So I don't know how I feel about that, but I do like the color they picked, kind of the purplish. It's not exactly. It's kind of close to Apocalypse's purple there, but at the same time it's kind of brighter and stuff, so it kind of fits her character a little bit better. But hopefully we'll get a better picture soon where we get to see a full outfit like facing her and she's facing us, so we can kind of see instead of like a side angle. But anyways, that's a pretty good picture overall. Next photo we have here is just a simple Michael Fassbender photo. He has red in his eyes. I'm not really sure if he's been crying or something really intense is happening. He's got a plaid shirt on or something like that. There's somebody in the background kind of blurred out. I'm not sure that's a prominent character, so not really sure. But Michael Fassbender, of course, just staring off. I'm not really sure. This is kind of a random photo, to be completely honest with you. But hey, I'm assuming this film is going to go into some very dramatic territories because I think they did say that they're going to be exploring Mystique and Magneto's relationship. So he's probably going to go through some intense stuff in this film. So expect Michael Fassbender's Magneto to go through some dramatic moments and some really intense moments, and then of course pull through and be the badass that he is. So there's that. Next photo we have here is I believe Beast, yes, and we have of course Xavier with that banging hair job there. We have Mystique as well. I don't remember the woman's name in the background. I believe that she was from First Class, and now she's returning in Apocalypse. And I do not know who that other guy is standing behind Beast and Professor X. But anyways, the main photo to take away from the main photo, not the main photo, the main point take away from this photo. God, my words are just all over the place. Is of course Professor X's hair here, and of course Mystique is there with them as well. So what this is basically saying is that Mystique, I believe, as we can tell, the actual next photo will kind of more confirm it, is that Mystique is now with the X-Men, it seems, because she's there with them. She's not like captured. She's just there. I believe that she's chosen Xavier's side over this whole situation because she sees what Magneto has decided to do, and he's going to go in this direction. And she's like, I don't want no part of it. I do not want any part of it whatsoever. So she's picked Xavier's side, but Xavier, honestly, at this angle, it looks like Xavier is kind of like a young Wolverine from X-Men Origins Wolverine when he had longer hair in the back, kind of like that. That's what it kind of reminds me of. If you look at it from farther distance and you see Professor X in the wheelchair, you honestly, if you look at it hard enough, you'll start thinking it's Hugh Jackman sitting in that chair. Excuse me, but but that was actually pretty interesting. I just noticed that he looks like Hugh Jackman a little bit. But they're at Cerebro, probably figuring out something, probably trying to detect Apocalypse. But we'll of course see it in context in the movie. So more of a reassurance. We have two more photos here officially. Well, I think there's a third thing. Yeah, there's a third thing we got to look at. But anyway, so the second to last official photo we have here is, of course, we have Quicksilver and Mystique. Sorry, I almost said Jean Grey. Wow. And this kind of confirms something as well, once again, that Mystique is now with Xavier's crew, and of course Quicksilver is now a part of the X-Men. We're assuming here what this picture is from, because it looks like they're on the actual on the X-Men jet essentially, and they're kind of in costume, as you can tell, unless those are like harnesses for their seatbelts, because that X-Men jet can get pretty insane. I can't remember the actual name of the X-wing, or I don't think it's the X-wing. It's something. But anyways, I don't know. I'm thinking this is a costume, because even if it's not, the little handles going over their shoulders and going down like a chest plate, even that under it, they do have costumes on. They look kind of grayish, kind of plain, but hopefully there'll be some more color or something into it, kind of pay some more homage to the comic books where their kind of colors are kind of coordinated from what the comics had them. But anyway, this is just a photo of them staring at each other and going, Mystique's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And Quicksilver's like, I'm going to steal the movie again, because that's what he does. So there's that. But the main thing to take from this is that Quicksilver is now part of the X-Men, from what we assume. And Mystique is on X-Men's side in this film, or at least in this part of the film. And the final photo we have before we get to the little, meet the mutants or whatever, meet the new mutants and meet the new cast of characters, which we'll kind of rush by because I kind of want to get to the second topic really bad. But anyway, so the final picture we have, that's a professional photo here, is Bryan Singer talking to Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse, and we see Storm, and we get to see that kind of shirt, that kind of red plaidish type shirt on Michael Fassbender again. I'm assuming this is a pretty crucial scene. I'm assuming, well, maybe now I think about it, if he's wearing that shirt in that actual photo before, Michael Fassbender Magneto, then he probably sees Apocalypse for the first time. So that's going to be interesting to see that meeting between Magneto and Apocalypse. But I'm really interested to see what this scene entails, because it looks like they're kind of in a warehouse where Magneto can kind of meet the Four Horsemen, or kind of bring the Four Horsemen to his side and all that kind of stuff, and bring people to join him and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what happens. So anyways, down here, meet the New Mutants. We have Storm, Jubilee, and Cyclops, and Nightcrawler, and Jean Grey. I might not put this on the actual video or whatever, because I'm going to go by it very fast. We already talked about Storm. Storm looks pretty neat. Jubilee, she's wearing the yellow jacket from what we expect, but I'm not really sure how to feel about this, because they've tried to do Jubilee for a long time, and now they're finally having Jubilee in the movie. So we'll see what they do with it. Young Cyclops, nothing too much really to tell from this picture. Like I said, nothing really to stand out here. He's just wearing glasses, and obviously he's covering his eyes, and there you have it. Nightcrawler, of course, looks like a younger version from X-Men 2, so nothing really to talk about there. And then young Jean Grey, she's got red hair, and yeah, okay, so there you have it. So there's nothing really to go off these pictures, those set of pictures, so I won't even post those in the actual, show them off in the actual podcast. So there you have it, guys. That's my thoughts about the X-Men Apocalypse Entertainment Weekly photos. They are pretty awesome, and I can't wait to see more. I hope to see a trailer pretty soon, but we probably won't see one until October, hopefully October, from the month of my birthday. So, anyways, let me take a sip of the drink. We'll continue on with the second topic, which is, of course, Walking Dead. Okay, so let's continue on now with the second topic, which is Walking Dead random talk. I don't know exactly what I'm going to call it, but basically, I want to talk about the show because I've been binge watching it. And I know I'm late, like I said before in the beginning of this podcast, but my friend has been recommending me to watch Walking Dead ever since I got Netflix, because I got Netflix late as well, but it got me to finally get into Walking Dead. I got into Walking Dead season 1 probably around February or March or April of 2015. I cannot remember when, because I watched the first season and I didn't continue on to season 2 until literally I think about a week ago, because I've watched the first season. I enjoyed the first season. I enjoyed the journey of Rick getting out of the hospital, waking up essentially, and realizing the world has gone to hell in a handbasket. And he comes across the guy who saves him and his son, and he eventually finds Shane, his cop friend, and of course his wife and son are still alive, and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the whole dramatic there. They're part of the group. They're trying to figure out all this type of stuff, and I really did enjoy the first season for what it was, but I just, for some reason, just didn't want to continue on to season 2. And once you start on season 2 and season 3 and season 4, everything picks up insanely. I think that the show writers did a fantastic job with that, because season 1 was short, sweet, to the point, and it hooks you right in if you're interested in this type of show, because it's brutal. There's a lot of brutal stuff they show on the show, but there's a lot of dramatic and character development, the dramatic moments and character development that really keeps the viewer watching and paying attention. Because if it was just a show constantly about zombies, about this, about that, and there wasn't really anything more to it than just people dying left and right, and there's no character development, just people run out and get killed by zombies, the show would be unappealing. So the fact that I know it's from the comic books, and know that they've done a TV show about, taken from the comic books. They've changed some stuff, of course, for the TV show to switch it up and make it more interesting, and to keep the audience on edge, because you just don't know what happens. They really did a fantastic job there. Now, obviously, overall, like I said, I'm going to get into spoilers here. I feel like that Dell, his death, I felt was just really unfortunate, and I really wish they would have kept him around a little longer. Simply because Dell was a character that just kind of kept things grounded, because everyone a part of the group besides Dale was basically like, we need to execute this guy, we need to kill this guy that we found that his group might come attack us on the farm. So they're gonna execute this kid, and Dale shows, we can't do this. We have to have order, all this kind of stuff. You're basically going into anarchy, and we're basically saying, the rules of the world and all this kind of stuff, and basically the law and everything, it doesn't matter anymore, and it really doesn't. But Dale just kind of made you look at the perspective of, we're just going to murder somebody. And the fact that when Rick decides, after his son walks in and says, no, do it, Dad, do it, and then Rick's like, he couldn't kill the prisoner, so they're going to hold him, and all that kind of stuff. And then you see where Dale is walking, and then he gets killed by a walker. Well, now he doesn't die, because then he has to get shot in the head by Daryl. So, it is what it is. But definitely a very intense death there. But throughout the show, I really enjoyed the journey that Rick goes through, because Rick, of course, wakes up. He's the main character of the show, and he goes through a lot of crazy, insane stuff. He finds his wife and son, and he really just becomes the leader of this group. And I think that that's really awesome that he does, honestly, because I feel like he is a good leader for. I feel like he's a good leader for what he's trying to do, because he's trying to keep everybody together, he's trying to keep everybody safe, but he's proving each time when he makes the decision that he's just a human, that he's just a man. He's not trying to be a leader that is the most powerful being, and he knows all and everything. He constantly reminds himself and others on a daily basis he doesn't know what he's doing all the time, and he's just going with the flow and what really makes sense, because he's so terrified to lose any more people. And unfortunately, we keep losing people, and it's just very heartbreaking to watch people die, and to see where you really get attached to certain characters, and it's kind of like Game of Thrones, and I've not seen a Game of Thrones, but I know the reference where everyone says once a person becomes a favorite character on the Game of Thrones show, they die. So on The Walking Dead, it's kind of like that. But what's really really good is a lot of people love Daryl, and Daryl, at least right now, until because season 6 hasn't started yet, but he could die in season 6. Everyone's saying that he might die in season 6, Daryl. But Daryl is a favorite character by a lot of people, and one of my personal favorite characters, who unfortunately did die in season 4, is of course Herschel, and I hated that so much because I felt at first it was interesting because Herschel wasn't a likable character, at least to me, when he was first introduced on the farm, when Rick and the group find the farm and everything, and then they stay outside and all that kind of stuff, and they eventually move inside to live in there. But at first, Herschel to me was not a good character. I did not like Herschel. Now, obviously, he was obviously there, of course, to being the owner of the farm and everything, and there were some dramatic things there. But overall, I just felt that he wasn't a good character. And then once he got closer to Rick, got more and started to respect Rick more and everything, and basically started listening to what Rick had to say, I believed Herschel became kind of like the father Rick doesn't have in the show, and was kind of there always to help Rick and to kind of guide him when he needed help, because Rick doesn't have the answers all the time. So Herschel became that father figure that Rick does not have. So Carl is, of course, Rick's son, and Carl has a father figure in the show, of course, Rick. But Rick doesn't have someone he could talk to. He has friends, he has, obviously people that are a part of the group that he could talk to. But Herschel is the character that he would go to, and Herschel would be that guy to kind of give his advice to show Rick that you're making the wrong decision or you're making the right decision. And it was just such a tragedy that they had to kill him. But I understand why. Because in order for the show to do a complete 180, in order for the show to basically turn itself on its own head, they had to do that, and they had to make the goddamn governor come back in season 4 and screw everything up. They were living great in that prison. The original group with Rick and Herschel and all of them, and then they took in all the people that left the town. The governor, I forget what it was entitled, the governor had, and the governor was a pretty insane villain. But I'm glad that he's gone. I'm glad that he's dead. And but of course, the governor had to kill Herschel and do all this crazy stuff. It's just brutal. But in order for the show, like I was telling my friend last night, a hypothetical, I wish they would have did this instead of what they actually did, because as we see in season 4 where Herschel dies, that episode, the governor convinces this other group that we need to go take over the prison that Rick and his group are basically holding and that they're basically living in. So they roll up, and then of course Governor kills Herschel. They tear down a lot of things, and then the whole entire group, the people that survived the attack from the other group, everybody in Rick's group disbanded and went separate ways and escaped, and now they're trying to get back together and form back together and all that kind of stuff. And what I was telling my friend last night is that I wish the governor would have died in season 3, and then this other group shows up, and then they kill a few of the members of Rick's group, but Herschel does not die, and then they still have to leave the prison, but they're all together still, and they're continuing on. And my friend said easily, just quickly responded saying this: it would not have made good television if all you did was have a random group show up and then they start attacking, because it would just make no logical sense. There's no reason. They would just start coming in and shooting everything, and then you kill a couple people, and then Rick's group has to leave, of course, and Herschel is still alive and everything, and then you just continue on, and now they're just walking. Makes sense, okay, because if you really want to think about it, we've gotten used to Herschel being, the person always there for Rick. So if you kill the one person that has been a big supporter and been a lot of help to the group, now the group is disbanded, all this kind of stuff. And of course, the governor had to be a big plot point, because the governor has a long time grudge and hate against Rick and his group. So it made sense for them to pull this, but I really wish they would have just said, "No, let's just go my direction of killing a couple people, and the governor's been dead since season 3." But no, whatever. I do want to say one thing about the governor though that I really wish they would have explored more, and I told my friend about this, and he agreed with me as well. There's a whole section where we get it. They showed the scene where the governor and the people, his army, essentially takes out those army guys for no reason, just in cold blood. It's almost like Claude in cold blood, and it was very brutal to watch. But then when you see all this brutalness that the governor's doing, and he's basically a piece of shit, it shows a very soft side of him. I really wish they would have explored more in the show, and unfortunately they did not. And that is his daughter being a zombie, and he's trying to treat her like she's still a human being. And I know in season 2 that they basically did that kind of angle a little bit with the barn incident on the farm where Herschel and his family have walkers, and they're basically people that they know before they died, of course, reanimated into a zombie, and they kept them in the farm essentially, and was being, taking care of the walkers, even though that they're not people, they're walkers. But we all know how that ended. Well, Shane opened that damn door and started firing, and everybody started firing into that damn thing. Um, but this angle was different because we got to see all of this horribleness in this very evil person, the governor. And then he goes and he's brushing his daughter's hair, and she's a zombie, of course, and he's trying to treat her like his daughter still, and it's just very creepy yet interesting to watch. And one really noticeable scene, it's one of the only scenes that they ever have together where it's him and his zombified daughter, is that he has the bowl of what looks like flesh or something where she can eat, and he's trying to get her to look at him. Of course, she's not going to look at him. She wants to eat flesh or whatever the hell's in the bowl on the table next to him, and he's trying to get her to look at him. He's like, "Please look at me," and she never looks at him, and then so he puts her back in the cage. And of course, Michonne, I believe her name is Michonne, with the samurai lady, as I call her, basically brutally kills his daughter, and then all goes to shit. But of course, she wasn't alive; it was a zombie, so kind of didn't really mean that. It kind of meant it meant a little bit to, of course, to the viewer, because you got to see how he was still trying to treat her like a human being. But I mean, come on, she's a zombie. You can't. That's just too dangerous. Even though she's a kid, too dangerous. But and then like I was saying, Herschel death. And then the whole prison thing where they had 5 prisoners, and one of the guys was a complete douchebag, and he was trying to basically get Rick killed, and Rick had to kill him, and then there was a whole situation there. There was one brutal scene I do want to talk about real fast because I'm just kind of winging it, and then I'll end the podcast, is when Carol had to kill the sister after the disbandment of the prison, where Tyrese, I believe his name is, has, of course, Rick's a daughter, and they had 2 sisters in Carol. And the older sister of the 2 decided to stab the younger sister because she's like, "I'm gonna prove to you. She's gonna wake up. She's gonna come back, and everything will be okay." Because the older sister believes when you come back as a zombie, you're still a person, whatever. And no, you're not. Not in the show, at least. You're not a person when you revive as a zombie. So Carol had to murder the older sister. You don't get to see her. You don't get to see the shot, but you see her fire the gun, but you don't see it impact the older sister. But man, it is brutal because it's like, it's just brutal, man. This is some very brutal moments. One more thing I forgot. It's reminds me of another brutal moment of the show. It just shows how intense this show gets. Is when they're trying to find Carol's daughter, and now that's why I remind me, because Carol had a daughter in the show. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but they were trying to search for her for a long time, and they get on the farm. They're still trying to find her, and then when Shane loses his mind and opens the barn door with all the walkers that Herschel and his family have put in there because they know who they are. Excuse me, my voice. They know who they are. They started firing and killing all these things, and then you hear one little bleh, and then out comes Carol's young daughter, and she's a zombie. I'm like, oh god, she was in the farm the entire time, and no one could shoot her. She was walking slowly, walking over the dead bodies of the other zombies, trying to get to them. No one can shoot her. And of course, the one person who had to do it, because he basically helped her get away from other zombies and actually lured zombies away from attacking her. And of course, Rick had to be the one to kill the daughter of Carol, because he's the one that was trying to save her away from the zombies, and she ended up being lost. And we don't know what actually happened. And now I think she got bit. I'm not really sure. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if not, we don't know how long she was in the barn or everything. But we all know that she got it pretty bad. So shows you how intense the show gets. Carol kills a older sister because she's killed her younger sister. She's thinking that zombies are people, and they had to kill, of course, the daughter of Carol because she was a zombie, and they were trying to find her for days. I think weeks. I think it was only a couple days, but wow, it's pretty brutal. Like, she was in there the entire time, we assume. So anyways, guys, that's the end of the podcast, episode number 23. What are your thoughts about the X-Men Apocalypse Entertainment Weekly photos? Let me know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts about Walking Dead up to season 4? Let me know in the comment section below. I know it's random talking for Walking Dead, but all over the place. But like I said, I just wanted to talk about a couple of these things, and why not tell it on a podcast. So anyways, guys, thank you guys for listening. Peace out.